What's up, YouTube, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another session. So as you can see by today's title, I'm gonna do another reaction for you guys, and I haven't seen this video at all. I've just been scrolling through on my YouTube homepage and seeing that actually this video might be something worth watching. The title of it is called Train for Any Argument with Harvard's Former Debate Coach, Bo Seo. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I do apologize if I've completely and brutally murdered that. But before we get to today's video, I just wanted to do a check-in with you. I hope you're vibing and thriving. Wherever you are, let me know. Give me a blue heart. No, give me a mustard heart in the comment section and let me know that you are vibing and you are thriving, because that's what I want for you. You deserve it, okay? Now, without further ado, let's go straight into the video.
Our public conversations are in a state of crisis. They're stuck. It's people fully convinced of their views, shouting at each other from a distance. One of the reasons why we find it so difficult is, I believe, because the skills of good argument have been atrophying for some time.
Definitely agree. I said it in my last video. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It'll be right here. That I feel like we are losing the skill to be able to debate with each other, to have opposing opinions and have opposing thoughts and feelings and viewpoints. It's almost as if now there is an agenda, it feels like, for a certain type of thinking to exist in society. And you see that through the censorship in the media, with the news that we get given and everything like that. It's very heavily edited and doctored. And so it just makes you start to think, like, what really is the truth? What actually is going on out there? You know? What really is behind that curtain? But yeah, we need to get back to healthy debates. We need to get back to being able to have conversations. Not everything has to be a conflict all the time. It just feels like the world is just always in conflict right now. I think that's what I'm trying to say, to summarize it quite nicely. Let's continue.
We no longer view argument as something to be worked at. Rather, we see it as something we jump into out of instinct or defensiveness. The bad arguments that result decrease our confidence in what disagreements can do for us. So the quality of the conversation further degrades. I think we need to restore confidence and faith in what disagreements can be, and to highlight its potential as a source for good as well as a source for ill. My name is Bo Seo. I'm a two-time world debate champion.
I did get his name right. Bo Seo. Beautiful name, by the way. Bo Seo.
A former coach of the Australian and Harvard debate teams, and I am the author of Good Arguments.
How to argue better. I like that.
For me, my love of debate is inextricably tied to a life that I've led of always moving countries. I had to move from South Korea to Australia as an 8-year-old without really speaking English.
Wow.
And I quickly found the hardest part of crossing language lines, of cultural lines, was disagreements, where people tend to be more disruptive, to interrupt, to speed up and slow down. In response to all that, I resolved to be very agreeable in the way in which I presented at school and to keep my thoughts to myself. The thing that changed that was I joined the debate team off the strength of one promise, which was that in debate, when one person speaks, no one else does.
You listen.
And to someone who had been interrupted and spun out of conversation, that sounded to me like a kind of salvation.
More often. Will ya? Please.
If
Best
intelligence
advice anyone
is
could give
the
you. Just listen.
ability to respond to any argument, wisdom lies in knowing which arguments to respond to and which parts of an argument to respond to. Arguments
This guy already
are
sounds
easy
like
to
so
start
freaking
and hard
smart,
to
like
end
for real.
because there are any number of differences between two people. And unless you're careful to say, we're having this disagreement at this moment and not all the other disagreements we could be having, all of the differences between two people can start flooding in. And the argument becomes this unruly mass where any of the potential sources of conflict can come to the fore, and you're not making progress on any given one. One of the frameworks that I developed in order to pick my fights more wisely is called the RISA framework. Before launching into a disagreement or challenging a claim, ask 4 things. First, whether the disagreement is in fact real, as opposed to a misunderstanding. Second is to ask whether it's important enough to you to justify the disagreement. The third is to ask whether the topic of disagreement is specific enough in order for you to make some progress. And the fourth is to ask whether you and the other person engaged in the disagreement are aligned in your objectives for wanting to partake in that conversation.
Okay,
Bye.
so that sounds like a really good framework, right? And it makes sense, like how he's broken it down and explained it and everything. But is this in? Can you apply this to when you're in the heat of the moment? You know, I think that's where a lot of us kind of fall short in the sense that by that point our emotions are so heightened that this framework might not necessarily work. With some people, they don't get a gradual increase where maybe during that gradual increase they can implement this framework to be able to then better handle a conflict or a difference in opinion or whatever. But for some people, the emotions are very, you know, quick. And so will this framework work for those kind of people? Just a thought. I don't know, but you let me know in the comments what you think.
Checking off on these 4 lists, you can't guarantee that a conversation is going to go well, but you may be able to give it the best possible chance of doing so.
Okay, fair enough.
One of the limitations of the RISA framework that I worry about is that it is increasingly difficult to find the right kind of alignment in people's interests for wanting to engage in a disagreement. So if you have 2 sides that simply want to hurt one another's feelings, that's some kind of alignment, but not the right kind that leads to productive conversations. So one place where you might be able to apply the RISA framework is getting together with extended family for Thanksgiving or Christmas and knowing that some of the personal or political disagreements are going to bubble up to the surface. There is
Again, I think this is a great framework, but there are definitely some people who this framework might not necessarily work for. Again, if you come from, for example, a broken home, and not to say that people who come from broken homes or who have experienced, you know, hurt and pain in some way, shape or form, can't then kind of apply this framework and, you know, for it to be benefited by it. But I'm just saying that for people who may have been through that kind of, you know, early childhood experience or whatever, or family dynamic or whatever, where it's an unhealthy environment and there aren't any tools to, you know, that have been able to endure this, you know, bringing the family together or whatever. So again, just a thought, but let me know what you think in the comments.
book provides 2 sources of help in that situation. The first is that every disagreement should start with a little bit of agreement. And that is often naming exactly what it is that you disagree about so that it doesn't bubble up into all the different areas in which you don't see eye to eye. First step is to
Even more difficult if the family dynamics are already really bad.
The second thing is to check, well, why do you want to engage in this disagreement? And can we come to an agreement about what it is that we're hoping to get out of this conversation? So forcing the slightly quarrelsome family member who just wants to be a contrarian or to cause trouble to say, are you really in this hoping to persuade me to change my mind. That bit of negotiation of why it is that we're in the conversation in the first instance can often allow our conversations to go better than if we just jump into the disagreements without much forethought. It allows.
This is I feel like a framework which would work really great in an environment that is that has some level of foundation or firm foundation already established, you know, if you know what I mean.
To almost make a contract with the other side. This is what we're disagreeing about, and these are the reasons why we're engaging in that dispute. And one of the things that you can do with someone who tries to break those rules, to expand the debate into something it wasn't about, to change the topic, to introduce new reasons for wanting to engage in the dispute, is just to remind ourselves of the agreement that we made and to bring the conversation back to those parameters. Just as any number of the differences between two people can give rise to a disagreement,
By the way, I was thinking about this earlier, and I really would love to start attending debates. I feel like that would be such a healthy thing for me to witness, and a healthy environment for me to be in, because that in itself is conflict management. You know, if you're able to be within each other's presence or engaged with each other in conversation in any way or whatever, and you're able to converse and have very civilized conversations, even if your differences are right there on the table in your face, bam, you know, I'd prefer that. Like, I feel like that would be so cool that would be such a. Okay, sorry YouTube. So my camera had died and I've had to switch cameras. Yeah, so if you notice any quality changes, that's probably why. But anyway, let's get back to the video.
And knowing that some of the personal or political disagreements are going to bubble up to the surface. The RISA framework provides two sources of help in that situation. The first is that every disagreement should start with a little bit of agreement. And that is often naming exactly what it is that you disagree about, so that it doesn't bubble up into all the different areas in which you don't see eye to eye.
See, and that's the problem now in this day and age, especially when it comes to kind of like, you know, social kind of like issues and things like that. There is no agreement to disagree anymore. It's you see differently to what I see, and so therefore you're wrong. And I think that is fundamentally wrong. I think that's why we need to invite back the spirit of debate, the spirit to be able to sit down, even if we have opposing views and opinions to each other, and be able to have a conversation. And, you know, a conversation with two different views doesn't always have to end in, you know, quarrels or, you know, heated arguments or anything like that.
First step is to name the disagreement in front of you. The second thing is to check, well, why do you want to engage in this disagreement? And can we come to an agreement about what it is that we're hoping to get out of this conversation? So forcing the slightly quarrelsome family member who just wants to be a contrarian or to cause trouble to say, are you really in this hoping to persuade me to change my mind? That bit of negotiation of why it is that we're in the conversation in the first instance can often allow our conversations to go better than if we just jumped into the disagreements without.
I have a feeling that they're gonna start. I have a feeling that they're gonna start doing. I don't know if you guys can still see me properly because my setup here is a little bit crazy. But anyway, I'm saying I have a feeling they're gonna start introducing classes on how to argue. Like, do you realize how messed up of a society that we live in, that we have to learn how to argue? Like, why isn't that just a normal thing where we could just have a conversation without arguing? Yeah, it's a bit of a wild world that we live in.
Without much forethought. It allows us to almost make a contract with the other side. This is what we're disagreeing about, and these are the reasons why we're engaging in that dispute. And one of the things that you can do with someone who tries to break those rules, to expand the debate into something it wasn't about, to change the topic, to introduce new reasons for wanting to engage in the dispute, is just to remind ourselves of the agreement that we made and to bring the conversation back to those parameters. Just as any number of the differences between two people can give rise to a disagreement, any number of things that people say within an argument can be contested. The success cases, these are the ones in which the revolution works. Closing, I'll take you if you have something. And a part of the wisdom one has to develop as a debater is to know which arguments to challenge and which to let go. A Marxist revolution at this point doesn't change that, and will lead to a huge period of economic instability that will take away their world if we're to buy the premise of their case at all. There are two questions that we often ask to make that decision. The first is this disagreement between the two sides necessary to resolve in order to make progress in the argument? And if it's not, is us challenging it going to help us make progress on the overall dispute?
Very, very, very
No
valid
matter how
questions.
offensive or
Right? Very
wrong-seeming
valid
it may be,
questions.
by
Again,
asking whether it's first
missing.
necessary to challenge, or even if it's not, whether challenging it would help us make progress on the argument, you can be a little bit more judicious in how you disagree and prevent our arguments from becoming this unruly, all-encompassing dispute. One of the great lessons of debate is, in order to be heard, you have to first listen.
Ooh, that's poetic.
We're used to thinking about listening as an essentially passive act. We sit back in our chairs and take it all in. Debaters know that it's a much more active process than that. There are two lessons that we can take away from how debaters listen and to try and apply it in our own lives. The first is, it is in your best interest to understand the opposition's argument as they would understand. It's not in your best interest to twist their meaning or to take it at its worst or to capture only a fraction of it, because they won't feel as though they had been listened to and heard and ultimately responded to. The second thing is, it's also in your best interest to respond to the strongest version of the other side and sometimes to build up the other side's case so that it's even better than where they have it now. You know, after you finish speaking, the opposition might have a light bulb and come up with a better case. Or someone on their side might say, you've responded to the weak version of this argument, but here's something better. So the further you can take it and the stronger the version of the other side you can respond to, the more you challenge the other side to go even further and the better the conversation becomes. So much of debate is an exercise in certainty. It's about spending sometimes weeks researching your side of the case, coming up with the best possible arguments that you can.
I think when it comes to debates as well, like a lot of people often led by emotion a lot. And so that's why you don't really get a debate in the way that it's supposed to, because people often led by emotions. I mean, in this video, he's talking about researching your facts and knowing your side of the argument. Yeah, so people just, I think, are a bit too emotional these days, to be honest with you. Let's continue.
Sell the truth of your side to the listener. But in the last moments before a debater goes on stage, they know to take out a new sheet of paper and to put themselves in their opponent's shoes and write the 4 best arguments for the opposing side. They know also to look over their case again, this time through the eyes of someone who fervently disagrees with them, to identify all of the flaws and the criticisms that could be leveled against them. Debaters also know to imagine a world in which they lost the debate and to come up with the reasons why they did. Those exercises,
people
which
can't see past their own
science-switch
truths
exercise,
sometimes.
Puts a pause on that feeling of certainty.
Basically.
It makes us feel for a moment the subjective reasonableness of other people's beliefs. It gives us that moment where we get back on our toes and think maybe we missed something. It makes us imagine a world in which we're wrong, and all of that creates a wriggle room through which something like humility or empathy might arise. The side switch exercises and the kind of empathy that debate brings into the conversation is not only applicable in personal disagreements, but in my view, more urgently needed than ever in our political disputes and ideological commitments. Each of us are bigger.
I'll say that literally the past few weeks, I feel like I've become more aware of just like ideologies and social issues, but which parts of social issues or which social issues are potentially being um, propaganda through kind of like, ideologies and it's just, I feel like I'm seeking, I feel like I'm in a place in my life where I'm seeking information a lot, and I think that's healthy. I think people should have, you know, a good level of curiosity in their character, in their life and who they are, because I think that it in itself, in a way, it's like your driver, to finding answers, finding knowledge, growing.
Our political affiliation, than our religious commitments, than our ideological beliefs. It's in that setting that exercises like side switch become most effective. It expands the scope of what we are able to talk about. It enlarges and improves and strengthens our ability to talk about contentious and difficult issues in humane, compassionate, and productive ways. Get smarter, faster with videos from the world.
Okay, so that was the end of that video. Tell me what you think about everything that he said. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I personally think being able to debate, being able to have sit-down conversation, stand-up conversation, however you want to have this conversation, but have it in a way where it's respectful. I think that's more of a society that is gonna go somewhere, as opposed to where there's just so much divisiveness in terms of being able to communicate and talk to each other. There's just so much division right now. I think that needs to stop. But let me know what you think of the video in the comments down. Y'all, let me know what you think of the video in the comments section down below. But until then, I am out. Your girl is out. Bye.